My wife came home late every night for 3.2 months with the same excuse: working overtime. The night I followed her instead, she came home to divorce papers already signed by the judge. We had been married 7 years when my wife, Hina, first told me a new project had landed at work and she'd need to put in overtime. I believed her without a second thought. She had always been hard-working, so nothing about it felt strange at first. But when the same explanation repeated itself night after night, 11, sometimes midnight, a quiet unease began creeping into my chest. I kept telling myself it was just the workload, but somewhere underneath, a question I refused to say out loud had already started forming. The first week, it didn't bother me. By the second, I started noticing the mileage on her car without saying a word. By the third, I couldn't sleep properly anymore. Every time her phone rang, my heart would jump. She'd laugh, talk for a minute, then hang up saying, "It's the office." I'd nod and let it go, but inside, something colder was building. Was I really this naive? Or was she genuinely working as hard as she claimed, and I was the one losing my mind? Months passed. 1, 2, 3, and my suspicions slowly hardened into something closer to certainty. Friends made jokes that stung more than they realized. What kind of company stays open that late every night? That single sentence lodged itself in my head and wouldn't leave. I started checking her closet at night, glancing into her bag, sometimes sneaking a look at her phone screen while she slept. I never found anything, but the absence of proof didn't kill the suspicion. If anything, it made it grow stronger. That night when she said, "I'll be late again, there's a deadline," I made up my mind. Enough waiting, I would see the truth for myself. I took my car and followed hers from a distance. My heart was pounding, my palms sweating against the wheel. At every intersection I braced myself for the worst, that she'd pull up outside some hotel, or some stranger's house. My mind had already written the ending before the night even began. But her car didn't turn toward the office. Instead, it stopped outside a small building on the other side of the city. A sign hung above the entrance, "Advocate Farashik, Family Law." For a second, my heart simply stopped. A lawyer? Why? I sat frozen in my car, questions crashing into each other. Was she using a lawyer's office as cover to meet someone else? Or was there a completely different story unfolding here, one I hadn't even begun to understand? I sat there for nearly 2 hours, hidden in the dark, watching my own wife like she was some kind of criminal. When she finally stepped out, her face looked tired, but there was a strange calm in it too, something I hadn't seen in months. She adjusted her bag and walked straight to her car. I quickly turned mine around before she could spot me, but a new kind of fear had already settled in. This time, not about another man, but about something far bigger. I sped home ahead of her so I could get there first and act like nothing had happened. I sat on the couch, phone in hand, pretending to be absorbed in it. A few minutes later, the door opened. Hina walked in, her face exhausted but her eyes carrying a stillness I hadn't seen in 3 months. She set her bag on the table and, without a word, walked straight toward the bedroom. I followed her, my mind racing with 1,000 questions. At the bedroom door, I saw a file lying open on the table. I stepped closer, picked it up, and what I saw stole the breath right out of my chest. Divorce papers. Fully finalized. Complete with the judge's signature. Everything around me seemed to go dark for a moment. When had this happened? How had this happened? And the biggest question of all, why didn't I know anything about it? Hina saw me holding the file and gave a faint smile, one that held both pain and a strange kind of freedom. "You thought I was meeting a man, didn't you?" she said. "I was going to Farah's office. My lawyer's office. I've been building my case for 3 months." Her voice wasn't angry, wasn't tearful, just calm, steady, and final in a way that made my skin go cold. She went on to explain that she had proof, my messages, my car's location history, a hotel receipt I never imagined she'd ever see. "You thought I was blind," she said. "But I was just waiting so you'd have no excuse left." The ground seemed to shift under my feet. All those nights I spent suspecting her had, in truth, been her quiet way of covering for my own mistakes, the ones I remembered perfectly well myself. I wanted to speak, to explain, to defend myself, but the words wouldn't come. Hina closed the file and said, "The judge signed it today. All that's left is your signature." Her voice held no revenge, no hatred, Only the peace a person finds after finally standing on the other side of a truth they've carried alone for far too long. I stood there in my own home like a stranger, staring at papers that had already flipped my entire world upside down. That night I sat on the couch for hours, staring into the darkness outside the window. The suspicion I had carried toward my wife for 3 months should have been pointed at myself all along. People say suspicion blinds a person, but in my story, it was suspicion that finally forced me to see the truth I'd been hiding from myself. Hina never screamed, never called me names. She simply chose her path in silence, and that silence cut deeper than any words ever could have. Now, when people ask me what happened, I only say this: she was never late for the reason I imagined. She was quietly building her freedom. And maybe that's the biggest lesson life ever taught me. Before you point a finger at someone else, look inward first, because sometimes the thing you fear most is already sitting quietly inside you.